There are lots of reasons to think Israel is serious about flooding Hamas tunnels in Gaza with seawater. This image, taken November 30th by an American satellite imaging company, shows a beach near Gaza City. Note the black pipe running from the Mediterranean. That wasn't there in an identical shot about 2 months earlier on October 8th, the start of the war. Now take a look at this photo posted by the Israeli army. CBC hasn't verified this, but it shows IDF troops on the beaches of Gaza. Again, note what looks like black pipe here, here, and here. This video, published by the Daily Mail, citing Israeli media, appears to show the operation close up. CBC hasn't verified this video, but it shows IDF soldiers underground operating pumps attached to long hoses. The Wall Street Journal cites unnamed U.S. officials who say flooding has already begun. And the IDF's chief of staff said as recently as last week that flooding Hamas tunnels was a good idea. But it's been hard to get any concrete details beyond that. Israel is reported to have installed at least 5 large seawater pumps just north of the Al-Shati refugee camp, each capable of moving thousands of cubic meters of water per hour. Figure that's like an Olympic-sized swimming pool 24 times a day.
Good idea? Bad idea?
It's a great idea. Problem for the Israelis is that, yes, it might flush out Hamas fighters if they're down there, but maybe there are hostages down there.
So what does that look like? Would the plan even work? And whether it does or doesn't, what actually happens when you pump that much seawater into a place where people live? So first thing, understand that the amount of water we're talking about is astronomical. Hamas claims it has about 300 miles worth of tunnels. Now, we have no way of knowing whether those are small tunnels or big tunnels, but let's do some quick math. So 300 miles, that's around 480,000 meters. And let's just say that the tunnels are uniformly, 6 feet high and 5 feet across, which, to be clear, they aren't, but this is just whiteboard math. So the volume of a rectangular prism, we all remember from school, right? Height times width times length. So let's convert those numbers into meters. 1.8 meters high, 1.5 meters across, and what did we say? 480,000 meters worth of tunnel. That ends up being around 1.35 million cubic meters of volume. Probably less if you exclude the tunnels that are already destroyed. And a heavy industrial pump is easily capable of pumping thousands of cubic meters an hour.
That's eminently reasonable given the quantities that large-scale pumps are able to handle within civilian infrastructure for a variety of purposes.
So let's divide 1 million cubic meters by the pump rate, which is, around 3,000 cubic meters, and you end up with a result of 333, more or less. That's how many hours it would take to pump in that much water at that rate. That's about 2 weeks of 24-hour-a-day pumping. But experts we've spoken to think that's still a very conservative estimate.
Given the many known unknowns about this particular tunnel complex, I can say it would be very quick. If Israel really decided we are going to simply flood the entire tunnel network, they could fill it extraordinarily quickly.
So we're talking hundreds of Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of water in a matter of days or weeks. And it's worth noting, the IDF may not actually need to completely submerge the tunnels to flush Hamas out. Even knee-high water severely compromises how effective a tunnel network can be. But here's one snag. Who knows what shape the tunnel actually is? Here's what I mean. If you go through the top, and the IDF has released video, it says, shows these kinds of vertical entrances to tunnels. If you pump water in through the top, the layout of the tunnel absolutely matters, because to some extent you can push water uphill with enough pressure. But if the shape of the tunnel changes abruptly enough, water will only go so high. Now, this is an extreme example, but the point is, without knowing exactly what you're flooding, it's always going to be tricky to gauge how effective the flood actually is. And just consider how complex but fragmented the tunnel system is. There are several distinct branches, some of them connected, but some of them independent of every other tunnel. Flooding one doesn't mean you flood all.
There are a number of separate tunnel networks distributed throughout Gaza that the Israelis may have varying degrees of intelligence about the degree of interconnectedness, or whether there are some zones in which the flow of water can be isolated between one part of a network and another. It's definitely not as simple as turning on the hose.
Something like this plan has been done before. In 2013, Egypt flooded part of Gaza's tunnel network, which connected to its Sinai Peninsula. It was used for all kinds of smuggling, everything from weapons to cigarettes to gravel. But Egypt didn't use seawater, it used wastewater, sewage. According to the New York Times, it destroyed some 24 tunnels in the end. 2 years later, in 2015, it tried again, doing almost exactly what Israel is reportedly doing now. It pumped in seawater from the Mediterranean.
This is salt water that was pumped into one of the smuggling tunnels from the Egyptian side. There are 1,200 such tunnels in this area.
It destroyed several tunnels this way, but what was left behind, critics say, was a mess for civilians. Farmers complained of ruined crops, and in 2023, there's a much more dangerous issue.
The quality of drinking water in Gaza, it's really bad. Salinity is a real issue.
The problem with flooding on this scale is that you don't really have an idea where the water will end up. If the tunnel was a watertight container, maybe there's no real problem. But if the water seeps through the walls, through the soil.
The Palestinian Authority is saying it could have a devastating impact on Gaza's drinking water.
There are reports that there are a couple of 100,000 gallons of fuel stored there, which Hamas is using. And this also means that there's a risk of that kind of fuel also getting to the soil and potentially affect groundwater.
And remember, most Gazans already don't have access to clean drinking water. Water is tightly rationed. The supply literally piped in and managed by Israel because so much of the local aquifers are either depleted or contaminated, about 95% undrinkable. Palestinians in Gaza rely heavily on desalination plants, but those have been crippled by the war. At its peak, the system was providing 83 liters of water per person per day in Gaza. Now that's down to 3.
Many water wells, water treatment facilities, smaller desalination plants that have been affected by the bombing or have been destroyed.
Also, consider the impact on the earth itself. The same soft soil that allowed the digging of tunnels in the first place makes for very unstable ground when flooded. There are open questions about what risk that might pose to buildings above. Then there's the question of hostages.
With regard to the flooding of the tunnels, there is assertions being made that there's quite sure there are no hostages in any of these tunnels, but I don't know that for a fact.
There is no way for us to be sure where those hostages are or how vulnerable they would be. And you know, I've seen some media reports suggesting that because flooding the tunnels doesn't happen overnight, that the risk to hostages is relatively low.
It's not as though these tunnels will be flooded instantly and anybody in those tunnels would drown. This is a process that would take weeks.
Yeah, so sure, to flood hundreds of kilometers of tunnels, that could take a long time, but any single tunnel could be flooded incredibly fast.
Key caveat in success here is if you can't find the tunnel and it's not connected to a system you're already flooding, how effective can you be about flooding it and knowing that you're destroying the whole of the tunnel network?
And without understanding the exact layout of each tunnel, how would anyone know who's at risk?
Many unknowns on what it would mean. because it has not been carried out on this scale before.
For their part, Israel so far has refused to say much about it. Right now, there are only sporadic media reports that it is testing the idea. But what we know to be true is that these tunnels running underneath Gaza, that Israel has systematically targeted since the start of the war, they present by far one of the most difficult logistical challenges for Israel in eliminating Hamas. Flushing its fighters out into the open could be a big strategic win, but it might also be a big loss for all those civilians who also call Gaza home.